The notification appeared at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, glowing against the darkness of Lena Harper's bedroom. At first, she thought it was spam. Then she read it again. "Your book is #1 on Amazon. Congratulations." Her hands trembled as she refreshed the page. #1. Her memoir, the story her family had spent 28 years trying to erase, was now the most read book in the country. Strangers across the world were reading about the dinner tables where her name went unspoken, the birthdays no one remembered, the achievements that earned silence instead of celebration. Lena pressed her palm against her chest, feeling her heartbeat accelerate. This wasn't just success. This was vindication. This was the universe finally saying, "Your story matters. You matter." But success has a funny way of forcing people out of hiding. And the family that spent decades pretending she didn't exist was about to discover that the world disagreed. This is the story of how one woman's voice became louder than a lifetime of silence. Some families don't bury secrets. They bury people. Not with shovels or soil, but with silence, with selective memories, with stories told at dinner tables where certain names are conveniently forgotten. Lena Harper understood this truth better than anyone. She didn't grow up in a broken home, just an expertly edited one, where she existed only when it was convenient, only when it made the family photograph look complete. Her mother used to say, "Don't take up too much space, Lena." So she didn't. Not at the dinner table. Not in family conversations. Not in her own life. Until the day she decided to take up all the space they denied her. The Harper family looked perfect from the outside. The kind of family featured in neighborhood newsletters and holiday cards. They lived in a house with a manicured lawn, threw elaborate birthday parties, and never missed Sunday church. Her father was a respected accountant. Her mother volunteered at the library. They talked about family values with the practiced ease of people who'd rehearsed their lines. But inside that polished house lived an unspoken hierarchy. Some children were destined to shine, and some were destined to stay small. Daniel, her older brother by 3 years, was the family's crown jewel tall, charismatic, gifted at football. The kind of son who made parents puff their chests with pride. Every conversation somehow circled back to Daniel's latest achievement. His scholarship offers, his game-winning touchdowns, his bright future that everyone could see coming from miles away. May, her younger sister by 2 years, was the cherished baby. Delicate, artistic, prone to tears that brought their mother running. May got piano lessons and art supplies and patient explanations when she struggled. May was protected, coddled, adored. And then there was Lena, who had no defining role in the family narrative. She wasn't the golden child or the baby. She was the middle child in the worst possible way. Not a bridge between her siblings, but a gap they stepped over without noticing. Her mother didn't yell or criticize directly. That would have been too obvious, too cruel. Instead, she dismissed. A raised eyebrow when Lena spoke too long. A redirected conversation when Lena shared good news. A subtle sigh when Lena asked for help. Her father operated differently, through profound, calculated indifference. He noticed Lena only when he needed something. Someone to clean up after dinner, someone to run an errand, someone to disappear when important guests arrived. "Lena, go to your room. The adults are talking." She was 12 when he said that. 14 when she realized he'd say it even when she was 17. By high school, Lena had mastered the art of invisibility. She learned to speak softly so no one would accuse her of interrupting. She apologized for things that weren't her fault. She edited herself the way her parents edited family stories, removing the parts that didn't fit their preferred narrative. When relatives visited for holidays, the pattern never changed. Her parents would showcase Daniel's football trophies, play recordings of May's piano recitals, share photos from their vacation to Colorado. But when they reached Lena's name in the family roll call, they'd pause for the briefest moment, then move forward as if there wasn't much worth mentioning. And Lena's doing fine. Fine. That was her entire identity. Fine. Not excellent. Not struggling. Not worth elaborating on. Just fine. The emotional mathematics of it was devastating. Lena learned that love was not infinite or equally distributed. She learned that in her family, affection was a limited resource, and she ranked last in line. She learned that you could live in a house full of people and still be profoundly, achingly alone. Writing became her survival mechanism. It started with a journal, a simple notebook with a purple cover that she kept hidden beneath her mattress. At first, the entries were basic observations. Daniel got a new car today. Mom cried happy tears. Dad took 50 pictures. But gradually, they evolved into something rawer, more honest. Why don't they look at me the way they look at him? I got an A+ on my English essay, and Mom said that's nice without looking up from her phone. May forgot my birthday and no one noticed. Not even me, until dinner was over. The pages absorbed what she couldn't say aloud. The loneliness that felt like drowning in a crowded room. The envy that made her hate herself. The persistent feeling that she was a glitch in someone else's perfect family photo. Books became her refuge. She discovered memoirs written by people who'd survived impossible circumstances. Investigative journalism that revealed hidden truths, essays about the psychology of family dynamics. She underlined passages about resilience until the ink bled through the pages. She memorized quotes about survival like prayers. In school, teachers noticed what her family didn't. They praised her essays, her attention to detail, her ability to articulate complex emotions. Her English teacher once wrote on her paper, "You have a gift for making people feel things, don't waste it." But when Lena brought that paper home, eager to share the validation, her mother glanced at it and said, "That's wonderful, honey. Can you set the table? Daniel's girlfriend is coming for dinner." The small accumulations of neglect built up like sediment, layer after layer, until they formed the bedrock of who she became. Her parents never told her she wasn't enough. They didn't need to. They simply acted as if her presence was optional. Her feelings were inconvenient. Her existence was forgettable, and that quiet, persistent erasure shaped her more than any shouted insult ever could. By the time Lena turned 18, her siblings had developed the confidence of people who'd been celebrated their entire lives. Daniel moved through the world expecting applause. May navigated life, assuming someone would always catch her when she fell. Lena moved through the world expecting nothing. She left for college with 2 suitcases and a heart that had learned to need no one. Her parents drove her to campus, helped her carry boxes to her dorm, took a single photo, and left no tears. No lingering goodbye. No promise to call every week. Daniel had gotten a whole weekend of family celebration when he left for school. May would later get the same. Lena got 3 hours and a casual wave. But college was oxygen after a lifetime of holding her breath. At university, no one knew the Harper family script. No one knew she was supposed to be invisible. No one had been trained to look past her. For the first time in her life, Lena existed without comparison, without the weight of being the forgettable one. She majored in journalism with a minor in psychology, drawn to understanding why people hide truths and how those hidden truths shape reality. Her professors saw what her family never had. A young woman with uncommon emotional intelligence, a gift for storytelling, and the kind of observational skills that come from spending a lifetime watching from the margins. You notice things other people miss. Her journalism professor told her during office hours, "That's your superpower." Lena built friendships with people who asked about her day and actually waited for the answer. She dated someone who remembered her coffee order and the names of her childhood pets. She joined a writing workshop where people read her work and said things like, "This moved me," and "I felt this in my chest." She learned that she wasn't unlovable. She'd just been loved poorly. After graduation, Lena landed a job at a mid-sized newspaper covering local investigative stories. She wrote about embezzlement at a nonprofit, corruption in a school district, a landlord exploiting immigrant tenants. She was drawn to stories about people whose voices had been silenced, whose truths had been buried, whose pain had been dismissed as exaggeration. Maybe it wasn't coincidence. Maybe it was destiny. Or maybe she'd spent so long having her own story erased that she became obsessed with making sure others' stories survived. She was good at her job, tenacious, empathetic, unafraid of difficult conversations. But there was one story she kept avoiding. One truth she kept burying beneath other people's revelations, her own. The idea for the memoir came during a therapy session when Lena was 31. She'd been seeing Dr. Morrison for 2 years, slowly unpacking the architecture of her childhood, learning words like emotional neglect and complex trauma and invisible abuse. "You're a journalist," Dr. Morrison said gently. "You tell other people's stories for a living, but you've never told yours." Lena felt her throat tighten. "My story isn't dramatic enough. There was no violence, no addiction, no obvious villain. Just absence." "Absence is a form of violence," Dr. Morrison replied. "Silence is violence. Invisibility is violence. Just because the wounds don't bleed doesn't mean they don't exist." That night, Lena opened her laptop and typed the first sentence. "Some families don't bury secrets. They bury people." The book poured out of her over 18 months. Some nights she wrote through tears. Other nights through white-hot anger. She wrote about the birthday parties where no one sang to her. The graduations where her parents arrived late and left early. The countless moments when she tried to be seen and was met with strategic blindness. She wrote about Daniel's wedding, where she wasn't asked to give a speech about May's art show, where her parents flew across the country but forgot to mention it to Lena until after. About the Christmas when she had the flu and stayed in her childhood bedroom for 3 days without anyone checking on her. She wrote about the accumulation of small absences that became a canyon. Her agent warned her, "This genre is saturated. Unless there's abuse or addiction, memoirs about difficult families don't usually break through." Lena's response was firm. People need to understand that neglect doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers. And those whispers leave scars that last forever. She titled it, "The Invisible Child, Growing Up Seen But Never Noticed." Before publication, she sent courtesy emails to her family. Not asking permission, she didn't need it, but informing them. The responses were revealing. In their absence, Daniel didn't reply. May sent a brief message. "Do you really think this is necessary?" Her mother called, voice tight with controlled fury. "This is private family business. You're going to humiliate us." Her father's email was a single sentence. "Don't expect us to support this." Lena read each message, felt the familiar twist of hurt, then clicked send on the manuscript anyway. She'd spent a lifetime protecting their image. It was time to protect herself. The book launched on a Tuesday with modest expectations. Lena did a small reading at a local bookstore attended by 17 people. She posted about it on social media to her 400 followers. Her publisher scheduled a few podcast interviews. Then she waited. The first 24 hours were eerily quiet. No calls, no emails, no responses. Just the kind of silence she'd learned to recognize as foreboding. On day 2, everything detonated. Lena woke to her phone convulsing with notifications. Her book was being shared across social media platforms by people she'd never met. A popular therapist had posted about it on Instagram. This book articulates what thousands of my clients have tried to explain for years. A celebrity tweeted, "I'm sobbing, this was my childhood." By noon, The Invisible Child had jumped to number 47 on Amazon. By evening, it was number 12. By week's end, it was number 1. Her publisher called, breathless. "Lena, you're a phenomenon. We're going back for a 5th printing. International rights are selling. This isn't just a book. It's a cultural moment." Lena sat on her apartment floor, reading comments from thousands of strangers. "You wrote my story. I've never felt so seen. Thank you for giving me language for my pain. My therapist assigned this as homework. I'm sending this to my siblings who never understood." For the first time in her life, Lena wasn't invisible. She was undeniable. But with visibility came confrontation. 3 days after hitting number 1, her manager called with careful hesitation in her voice. "Lena, your family reached out. They want a meeting." Lena's stomach dropped. Of course they did. Not when she was 10 and crying herself to sleep. Not when she was 16 and begging for their attention. Not when she was 22 and trying to explain how their neglect had shaped her. Now they wanted to talk. Because the world was watching. Because their reputation was crumbling. Because their carefully curated image was being dismantled in real time by strangers on the internet. "What should I tell them?" her manager asked. Lena took a breath, steadying herself. "Tell them I've said everything I needed to say. Tell them it's in the book they refused to read." Her mother's voicemail arrived that evening, and it was unlike anything Lena had ever heard from her. The usual controlled tone had shattered into something desperate and furious. "How dare you air our private family business to the entire world? Do you have any idea what people are saying about us? Your father is humiliated. Daniel's wife is asking questions. May is in therapy because of you. You need to issue a statement. You need to clarify. You need to fix this immediately." Lena listened to the message 3 times. The first time, her hands shook. The second time, tears fell. The third time, she felt nothing but a strange, liberating clarity. Her mother was upset that people were talking. Not that Lena had been hurt. Not that the family had failed her, but that their image was damaged. Lena deleted the voicemail and whispered to herself, "You erased me first." That same evening, an email arrived from the International Psychology Conference, one of the most prestigious platforms in mental health. They wanted her as their keynote speaker. The topic, the long-term impact of emotional neglect, invisible wounds in plain sight. Lena stared at the invitation, her breath catching. This wasn't just recognition. This was validation on a global stage. This was the world saying her pain mattered, her experience was real, her voice deserved to be heard. She typed one word, yes. 2 months later, Lena stood backstage at the conference venue in Chicago. The auditorium held 5,000 people. Therapists, researchers, survivors, advocates. The stage looked enormous, the lights blinding, the moment surreal. Her hands trembled as she reviewed her note cards, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of finally being heard after a lifetime of being silenced. The stage coordinator approached, face flushed. "Lena, there's something you should know. Your family is here. All 4 of them. They're in row 5. Time seemed to stop. What? Your parents, your brother, your sister, they're all here. Lena's first instinct was panic, then anger, then something unexpected. Calm. The same people who once sat at dinner tables pretending she didn't exist were now sitting in an audience of thousands, forced to listen. They'd traveled across the country, purchased tickets, and positioned themselves front and center for the story they'd spent decades trying to silence. The irony was almost poetic. "Good," Lena said quietly. "Let them hear every single word." When her name was announced, the audience erupted. She stepped into the blinding stage lights and for a brief moment allowed herself to remember the girl who used to whisper stories into notebooks because no one would listen to her voice. Then she saw row 5. Her mother sat rigid, hands clutching her purse like armor. Her father's jaw was locked tight, eyes darting between her and the cameras. Daniel slouched in his seat, arms crossed defensively. May stared at her lap, tears already visible on her cheeks. They looked small, uncomfortable, trapped. Lena smiled and began. "Good evening, my name is Lena Harper, and I'm here to talk about a form of trauma that often goes unrecognized because it leaves no visible scars. I'm here to talk about emotional neglect, the violence of absence, the trauma of silence, the pain of being physically present but fundamentally unseen." Her voice was steady, almost gentle, the kind of calm that comes from surviving storms no one else believed existed. Growing up emotionally neglected means learning that you're not quite worth the effort. You're present at the dinner table, but your voice doesn't carry weight. You're in the family photos, but you're somehow out of focus. You exist in the background of other people's stories, never quite the protagonist of your own. She paused, letting the words settle into the silence. You learn to shrink, to apologize for existing, to become the version of yourself that's easiest for others to ignore. And the most insidious part? You don't even realize it's happening, because there are no bruises to photograph, no broken bones to document, no dramatic incidents to report. Just the slow, steady erosion of your sense of self-worth. Her mother shifted uncomfortably. Lena continued. When the people who should love you unconditionally fail to see you, you internalize a devastating lie. That you're the problem, that you're too much or not enough. That you're inherently unlovable. And that lie doesn't stay in childhood. It follows you into every relationship, every job, every moment of your adult life. Her eyes briefly found her family before moving deliberately away. But here's what I've learned through years of therapy and thousands of conversations with fellow survivors. You can't erase a child, even if she spends half her life trying to erase herself, even if her family treats her like an optional footnote in their story, even if she grows up believing her feelings don't matter. The audience was completely still, hanging on every syllable. Because eventually, sometimes it takes decades, that child grows up, and she realizes her story deserves to be told. Not for revenge, not for attention, but because the truth deserves oxygen. Because silence protects the wrong people. Because healing begins when you stop protecting those who hurt you and start protecting the child you used to be. She clicked to her final slide. A single sentence in bold letters. Children remember everything, especially the things you pretend never happened. Lena let the words breathe before continuing. Emotional neglect is not a misunderstanding or a difference in parenting styles. It's a wound, a real, lasting, impactful wound. And acknowledging that wound, naming it, sharing it, refusing to minimize it, that's not betrayal. That's survival. That's healing. That's taking back the space you were taught not to occupy. Her voice softened, but didn't waver. To every person in this room who grew up feeling invisible, you were seen. You are seen. Your pain was real. Your experience mattered. And your voice, the one you were taught to silence, is the most powerful tool you possess. The auditorium exploded. A standing ovation rolled through the crowd like thunder. Cameras flashed. People openly wept. Therapists nodded with recognition. Survivors clutched tissues. Row 5 remained seated. Her mother's face had gone pale. Her father stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Daniel looked angry and trapped. May was crying. But her eyes were fixed on Lena with something that looked like revelation. For the first time in her life, Lena looked at her family, not seeking their approval, but with the detached observation of someone studying strangers. Because that's what they were. Lena exited the stage to immediate chaos. Conference organizers rushed her. Reporters shouted questions. Attendees waited in long lines, hoping for a moment of her time, but one voice cut through the noise. Lena. She turned. Her mother stood there, looking years older than she had just an hour before. Her carefully maintained composure had cracked, revealing something raw and desperate underneath. We need to talk. Privately. Once, those words would have made Lena drop everything. Once, she would have followed her mother anywhere, desperate for connection. Once, she would have apologized for causing discomfort. Not anymore. I've said everything I needed to say. Lena replied calmly. For the first time in my life, I said it to the right people. But the family was never there for me. Lena finished. And I'm done pretending otherwise. Her mother's face crumpled. You're hurting us. You hurt me first, Lena said without malice, just simple truth. For 28 years, and I stayed silent because I thought maybe one day you'd see me. But you never did. So I chose to be seen by people who actually wanted to look. She walked away. Not dramatically, not angrily, just steadily, like someone who'd finally outgrown the walls built to contain her. Outside the venue, Lena was greeted by survivors. One by one, they shared their stories. A woman in her 50s. I spent 40 years thinking I was being dramatic. Your speech gave me permission to be angry. A young man, barely 20. My parents say I'm too sensitive. This is the first time someone validated what I've been feeling. A teenage girl clutching the book. My family says emotional neglect isn't real. Can I show them your talk? Lena hugged them, listened to them, witnessed them in the way she'd always needed to be witnessed. And she realized this was why she'd written the book, not to punish her family, but to reach the millions of people who'd lived similar stories and been told those stories didn't matter. Lena sat in a bright cafe, laptop open, working on her second book. This one wasn't about her family. It was about the thousands of people who'd shared their stories with her, creating a collective memoir of survival and resilience. Her phone buzzed. A message from May. Can we meet? No parents. No Daniel. Just us. I've been in therapy and I have things I need to say. Lena stared at the message for a long moment. Forgiveness wasn't automatic. Trust had to be rebuilt, not assumed. But May was trying, and that mattered. Coffee next week. Lena typed back. Let's talk. Her parents had never apologized. Daniel sent one awkward text months ago that avoided the real issues entirely. But Lena had stopped waiting for their validation. She'd found something more powerful. Her own voice and a world ready to listen. Some families don't bury secrets. They bury people. But Lena had dug herself out. And in doing so, she'd illuminated a path for countless others to do the same. The weight of silence had been replaced by the freedom of truth. And that was its own kind of homecoming.